listening to the Motherhood Experience, a podcast where you are part of the conversation with moms, for moms, and by moms. Let's jump into this episode with me, your host, Val Kleppen. Hello and welcome back to the Motherhood Experience podcast. My name is Val, the host of the show, and I'm so pleased to have you joining me today. October is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. For some of us, that awareness is all too real. 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in loss, and there are many mothers who have crossed my path because of my own story, who have gone through miscarriage, stillbirth, or other types of pregnancy and infant loss, which you have heard about many times over the various episodes of the show. Today's guest is another lost mom, one who is yet again very special to me. I am joined by Sara Schultz. Sara's story is not only an endearing one, but Sara herself is just one of the most precious people I've ever had the honor of crossing paths with in my life, and it is an honor to introduce her to all of you. If you have been affected by pregnancy or infant loss and you are not sure where to turn or where to get any support, please email info@themotherhoodexperience.com, and I can certainly try to connect you with resources in your area or online. Also, I would encourage you to check the show notes for this episode where I've put contact information for Sara, who is more than willing to connect with you and talk about your loss as well. Once again, Sara is such a blessing to me, and I know that this episode will bless you as well. I would ask for you to share this episode with someone who needs encouragement or someone who has experienced loss and needs some understanding or support. I would ask you to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, and be sure to leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. That said, it is my honor to introduce you to Sara Schultz today, and I know that you will be blessed by her episode. So without further ado, my conversation with Sara Schultz. Ladies and however many gentlemen are listening to this podcast, this episode has been maybe 10 or 11 years in the making, I'm going to say, even though the podcast is only 2 years old. Thrilled beyond thrilled to have my guest, Sara Schultz. Sara, welcome to the Motherhood Experience.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
We have known each other for quite some time, but before we get into that, why don't you share with my listeners the ages of kids and stage of motherhood you're in?
I have 3 boys. My oldest is 15 now, which is insane. So he's a freshman, so I have a high schooler. I have a 13-year-old boy and an 11-year-old boy. Our daughter Ruby was stillborn 9 years ago now. And so she's a heavenly 9. And then we have Zelly, she's going to be 7 this week, actually on Saturday. So I mentioned the boys. It's Jude, Linus, and Felix. And then we have Ruby, our heaven baby, and Zelly. So yes, it's a busy household.
My mind is blown a little bit when you just said ages in the teens. It's almost like the thing where no one else's kids are allowed to grow up, only mine.
Right. And even are they really allowed to grow up? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's necessary. It's,
right. I do appreciate.
But yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
I appreciate kind of the more independence they have and the less mom I hear throughout the day.
Yeah, it is nice. We are encouraging Jude to go and get his permit. He's not super excited about it. He's like, meh, whatever. I'll get it. I'll get it when I get it. And we're like, can you get it now? But also don't, please. It's a weird mix of feelings about that. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. All right. So I am curious to know. You and Steve have been married. You'll have to tell me how many years. But when you guys first got together, were you more career focused or family focused?
So we have been married for 22 years, and I always had family in my mind, but I still had things I needed to get done. So I was finishing up undergraduate. I planned on going to grad school. So to begin with, I was more career focused. I wanted to get some of those things out of the way before we started a family. So yeah, we waited. I think we were married for about 7 years before we had our first child. And then it was all babies all the time while I was doing the career thing. So it was a lot.
When you had 3 boys in a row, did you resign yourself to just being a boy mom? Did you think a girl was possible at that point?
You know, I'm not sure. I wouldn't say I was resigned to anything. I loved being a boy mom. And, it was funny because I think the only time that I really was wanting, like expressed a want for a girl was when Jude was my oldest. So when I was pregnant with my oldest, I'm like, oh, I really want a girl. I don't know what to do with boys. But then after I had 3 and was pregnant again, I'm like, I don't know what to do with a girl. I've got this boy thing down now. I don't know what to do with the girls, but I was blessed with 2 of them, and one's looking out for me, and I'm looking out for the other one. So it's wild. She's a firecracker, and she rules this place. She's got. I mean, you got 3 older brothers. You got to, right? So she's in charge, and it's fun to see her. But I love my boys, so God gave me what He knew I could handle. So, or maybe more than I could handle. But either way, I love it.
You can handle it with him, right? It's all possible with him.
With him, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you had your 3 boys are, fairly close in age. What was it like having 3 young, active little men in your household while you were working and all of the things?
It was wild. It was wild. And it was a lot. And I think about it now, and when you get to this side of things, you think, oh man, I wish I could have enjoyed it more. I wish that I could have slowed down and just soaked it up. And I think I did a lot of that too, but it was stressful. And the thing is that, I was working during the day. My husband was home with the boys during the day. I came home. We basically all right, tag out. I was on, he went to work. And so, I mean, it was a lot. And I realize now that it was lonely too, because he wasn't home with me. And so I love my boys to pieces, and it was so good, but it was hard. And, I look back on it and I'm like, man, they were so much fun, and boys are just so much energy and just everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
And it was good. It was really good. But I think like anybody would wish that they could have enjoyed it more when they get to the other side, when they're not so little anymore. But I think that overall, I did the best I could with what I had. And I think we can all agree that it was good. We were together, and that's what matters. So
yeah. And I want to unpack that or dig into it a little more in a little bit. But first, I came to know about you before I ever met you because I got a phone call from the newspaper, and Miss Roxanne was writing an article about your family and about Ruby, and she wanted kind of like some research on pregnancy loss and support and all of that. And so I talked with her for like maybe an hour, but she was telling me about your family, about your story, your situation, and then asking me questions. And then she emailed me later and she was like, I can't get all of this into one column, so I'm just going to focus on Sara and her family, but thank you so much for your time. And so then I was just waiting for this article to come out, and it did, and I got to read your story. Yeah. So I knew about you before we ever met, and before you ever even knew who I was. But I would like for you to tell that story, why Roxanne was writing a story about you in the newspaper, and what happened for your 4th pregnancy.
Yeah, so it was 2016, and ironically, this was the one pregnancy that I felt confident about. Like, I had 3 boys, and it was always so chaotic, and my job was finally settled, and I knew for a fact that I would have health care. Like, it was the previous pregnancies there was just so much uncertainty. And so this one, I was just like, okay, all right, I got this, right? And it was at our 20-week ultrasound when they found something wrong. And of course, Steve wasn't with me. I was by myself. And the doctor's like, well, we found a hernia in her diaphragm. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what? Because, my previous 3 pregnancies were blissfully ignorant, right?
Mm.
Like everything went fine. I ended up with C-sections for all of them, but you know, all things considering, that was pretty good. We didn't have any major complications of any sort. And so this was my first like wake up call, like this is real, this happens, right? And the doctor's like, it's going to be okay. You know, we're just going to have you deliver down in the cities and the baby will have to have surgery right away, but we can fix this. And so then they scheduled a follow up with maternal fetal medicine so they could get a better ultrasound to make sure, you know, see what is all going on. And that's when they found all the markers for trisomy 18. And I remember when they told me they weren't 100% because the only way you can be 100% sure is if you do a blood test and they're like, we're not 100% sure, but we think that this is what's going on because we're seeing a lot of markers for this. And I remember sitting there, I went with my mom and I never had experienced, I guess, shock, but also like I didn't believe it. Like they're saying they're saying these things to me and I'm like, okay, why are you saying this to me? This isn't, you're not talking to me. We're not talking about my baby. You're just saying words at me. And then I'm like, whatever. And my mom's like, it's okay to cry. I'm like, I don't need to cry. This is not me. Right. And that was the start. So we did the blood test. We found out that it was trisomy 18. And then it was, you know, what do you want to do? And how do you want to handle this? And like, well, I'm not going to terminate the pregnancy. That's not an option. This, you know, this baby is mine and I'm going to see it through. But it was hard. We had a lot more appointments and a lot of like, what's going on? How, you know, and I remember asking the doctor, like, well, what's the severity here? Like, there's got to be varying levels of how bad this is, right? And because Steve had been looking online and he was trying to find hope. He was like, well, I found this case of this one girl who lived to be 21. And because a lot of times with trisomy 18, you don't expect it's considered incompatible with life. Mm-hmm. And so children will live various amounts depending on the severity, but it's essentially a death sentence. And so the doctors said, well, we don't know. You're about 50% chance that the baby will not make it, will be stillborn. And if the baby makes it to full term, then they'll probably live for maybe an hour or two outside of me. And so it was obviously devastating. And I didn't know how to handle that. I had 3 little boys and I was supposed to be their mom. And I didn't know how to be a mom to 3 little boys and a baby that I didn't get to keep. And so it was really hard. And having a history of C-sections, they're like, well, we want you to have a C-section because that's going to be better for you if you make it to full term. And that too was really almost impossible for me because I was having to choose her date that she was going to be born, but also die. Mm-hmm. And that was wrecking me. And so what ended up happening is she was stillborn at 27 weeks and 5 days. She chose her own time. And we didn't find out the gender of our children before. So all the boys were surprises. But with Ruby, we did because I wanted to get to know her as much as I could before I had to say goodbye. So we knew it was a girl. And I cursed myself because I thought, you know, I was joking about how I wouldn't know what to do with a girl. And now I have a girl that I don't get to keep. And that was soul crushing. But I tried to still be a mother to the boys, but also embrace the time that I had with Ruby. We had just bought a house and we were moving in August. And it was that weekend that I realized that I had not feel her move. So I spent 2 nights in our new home because we had moved in from a rental. And so it was this momentous occasion moving into our first home. And I spent 2 nights there. And then I spent a week in the hospital because she had passed probably over the weekend at some point. And it took me from Monday till Thursday in the hospital to try to deliver her. And they decided, since she had already passed, that a C-section wasn't necessary and we would try to do it natural. So she was the one baby that I was able to birth naturally, but it was a long haul. And it was crushing. Like when we found out that there was no heartbeat, I kept saying, I'm like, it wasn't time. This wasn't supposed to be the time. I was supposed to have more time.
Mm-hmm.
But now looking back on it, I realize that she was taking care of me because she knew how hard this was on me. Just this like date looming, and not being able to like focus on the children I have here and the child that I can't keep. And it was killing me. It was so hard. And so she took that. She's like, I'm gonna take this from you because this is too much. And as much as I hated that I had less time, I needed it. I needed for her to take that out of my hands, because the thought of scheduling a C-section for her death was too much. It's too much for me. So she was born at 27 weeks and 5 days. She was 1 pound, 1 ounce. She fit in the palm of my hands. And she was amazing. But we didn't get to meet her. So I held her. We both got to hold her. The kids got to see her. I don't think that any of the boys held her, but we got to have pictures together. I was able to, because I knew that it was not going to end well. I looked into Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, which is photography for miscarriages and stillbirths. And so I was able to get someone here to come and take pictures for us. So we had those at least. And yeah, it was hard. It was real hard. And that was 9 years ago. It's surreal to think and that I have been a mother to a heavenly child for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that she is a part of every day. Every day she is a part of our lives. We talk about her, we talk to her, my kids, they know her. Even Zelly, like she oftentimes will say, Zelly was the only one who didn't get to meet her. She often says, I miss my big sister. I wish I could see her. And I said, well, she's with you all the time. And she's like, I know, but I want to play with her. I'm like, I know, me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Sarah, I've heard your story. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. And I'm still sitting here crying. Of course, that's what I do, right?
and I love that about you so much.
So I want to ask this about the boys then, because your life was turned upside down during the pregnancy, and mentally and emotionally you had to navigate what you knew was coming while you were still pregnant. But how did these 3 wild boys adapt to your kind of emotional needs at the time and help nurture you, especially after Ruby passed away?
We did not know how to tell them. We had it scheduled and we talked to the doctor, like, how are we supposed to tell our kids? And we were going to have an appointment with the palliative care. Our palliative care team was scheduled for the week that I ended up in the hospital delivering her. So we couldn't, we didn't have an opportunity. Like we told them that, the baby was sick and, but we didn't say a lot. And so a lot of times it ended up being, there were times where I'd be crying, right? Because it was a lot. And oftentimes Steve was at work. So it was me and the boys. And I would just say, they're like, what's wrong, mommy? And I said, mommy's just really sad right now. And they would, of course, like give me hugs and like, we'll make it better. And I said, sometimes mommy just needs to cry and that's okay. And sometimes, you guys need to cry too. And that's okay too. And I said, mommy's not broken. Mommy just has big feelings. And sometimes we just have to let it out. And so they were amazing. They just did their thing. They were so little and they were just so sweet. And so for the most part, beforehand, they didn't really know a lot of what's going on. I'm sure they were fully aware that mommy was weird. Mommy was acting different. But overall, we really tried to keep going and, do what we could to keep their life normal. But then afterwards, there was a lot of like, how are you feeling about this? You know, let's talk about what thoughts are going through your head. And, Felix was 2. And so he really didn't grasp a lot of what was going on. And Jude was 6. Yeah, he was starting, it was his first day of kindergarten while I was in the hospital. And so we'll talk about some mama guilt there too. Like, I can't be in 2 places at once. And but Linus was the one I think who outwardly felt it the most. And I think he felt for all of us. Like he was the conduit. But we had a lot of just sit down conversations. And there were times where I told the boys, they're like, let's go do this. And I said, you know what? I'm sorry. Mom just needs a few minutes.
Mm.
And so then I would go and do my thing. Or sometimes I'd just sit and cry in front of them. And that was okay too. And they knew it. And they're like, are you missing Ruby? And I said, yeah, I am. Like, we miss her too. And I said, and that's okay. But she's always with us. And, someday we'll get to see her again. But yeah, it was really hard to navigate all of that because nobody told us what to do. Like,
Yeah.
we just had to kind of wing it and do the best we could. And basically what we just boiled down to was we're in this together and we're just going to have to do it together. And
Yeah.
we did. And, we continue to do that. I remember there were times when the kids would get upset about something, particularly Linus, but the others would too. And I would notice it. And so I would think, okay, this is a bigger reaction than is really warranted in this situation. So what's really going on? And a lot of times it was this event or this something triggered that I'm missing Ruby right now, or that I wish that she was here to see this, or, it's not fair that someone else's baby is here and yours isn't, ours isn't. And so those happen more often back then, less so now. But trying to be aware of that. And so I think overall we've all learned to kind of be more emotionally aware of each other and ourselves. And so I like to think that has helped the kids become more maybe emotionally mature, or at least just their emotional intelligence is a little bit better. I know that
Mm-hmm.
when there are instances where there's death, for example, our neighbor's dog had to be put down. They handle it really well and very graciously because they loved that dog. And they went over to go say goodbye, and our neighbors were just crushed. And like, well, now she gets to play with Ruby in heaven. and they talk about they just talk about death more comfortably, I think, than a lot of kids do. And I know another neighbor of ours was talking to me one day, and she said, the kids were talking about dying the other day. And I said, yeah. And she's like, is that okay? And I said, well, what did they say? Was it terrible? And she said, no, they were just talking about the people dying, and it happens, and just some stuff. And I said, well, as long as it wasn't like, disturbing, I think we're fine. And she said, okay, I just wanted to check to make sure that was all right. I'm like, this is a part of their lives.
Yeah.
This has been since they were little. This is normal for us. And yeah, we talk about it. We talk about it all. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question, but I like to talk about it.
Well, what I've noticed is, and this is part of why I asked you to lead the group that I asked you to lead, is because you're so easy to listen to, for one. And it's not from a place of, like, when I recount my story, it takes so much effort for me to not, depending on the day, depending on how I'm feeling, how much coffee I've had, so many variables.
Right.
Whether or not I can get through it at all. And sometimes I would say, like, this support group tonight was more for me than it was for any of you, and I'm supposed to be the leader of it. Like,
yep.
it just depended. But in your case, like
Yeah.
even when you are feeling things, like it's still always so grounded. I just always feel so, I don't know what the word is, but the only one coming to mind right now is safe. Like I always feel so safe with Sarah. And so when we met, it actually wasn't at a support group meeting when you and I met the first time, if I'm remembering correctly, and tell me if I have my details mixed up. But I think it was at the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Memorial that we met the first time. Is that right?
It was. Yes.
Okay.
It
At the
was.
country
Yes,
club.
that is correct. Yep.
And so I had known who you were, and I had known a little bit of your story from already talking to Roxanne and then reading the article when it came out in the paper. And then you showed up at the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Memorial. So I'm not sure how you found out about it or found out who I was, but I already knew who you were. But I remember two things specifically from that first time meeting. One is I remember this woman is an amazing hugger, and I hope that happens again. And secondly, I remember, and you know that's true because I talk about it all the time. But secondly, I remember there was something that you had experienced and endured after Ruby passed away in the hospital, and you and your husband had kind of started to offer this up for other families, and you wanted to know, like, can we talk more about this? How can we help other families like this? Why don't you share more about that?
Yeah. One thing that still bothers me about, there's a lot of things that were handled very well, but that's not always the case, unfortunately. I was blessed to have an amazing nurse who took care of me, and she was absolutely a blessing. But when it came to burial for Ruby, she was so tiny. She, like I said, she just fit in my palms, right? And we didn't know what to do. And my husband was talking with the funeral home, and they said, well, in these situations, a child casket, an infant casket is too big and expensive. And so a lot of times people will just use Tupperware. And fortunately, I was not the person on the phone with the person at the funeral home, because when I found out about what they had to say, I had a lot of choice words that don't normally come out of my mouth. And I was absolutely just aghast. Like I couldn't believe that this was their solution. And I still get really fired up about this, and actually I'm working on doing something about it. But my child is not leftovers. And I don't care how you slice it. Like they said, well, people take time, they decorate them really nice as well. I don't care if they're gold Tupperware. It's still Tupperware. My child deserves better than this. And I I still don't have words for it, because I just cannot believe that this would be a solution. Fortunately, among the many, many blessings that we were given with going through her death, my brother-in-law contacted a local funeral home back home, and they had a little casket that a local carpenter had been making them, and he had since quit or deceased, I'm not sure which, but they had one left, and he got a hold of it, and so it was perfect for her. I know that she was watching out for us, and I know that her hand and God's hand were in all of these things, and so we were able to bury her properly in a casket about the size of a cigar box. But I've been waiting for the right moment to approach that funeral director. And now I say it's been 9 years, and I feel kind of silly that I haven't done it sooner. But there's a right time. I'm sure of it. And I have been working in little ways to try to figure out ways to prevent that from happening again. I actually have 2 caskets in my garage that I'm waiting for someone to need. I walked with a friend of mine who we've become very close. She also had a daughter, Faith, who had trisomy 18. And we were connected through maternal fetal medicine. And so I had a casket made for her daughter by my neighbor. And she ended up, oh, that glorious Faith. She made it all the way to birth. And she was such a big girl. She was too big for the casket that I had made for her. So she got to use a full infant casket. And so she was amazing. I got to hold her. She actually, unfortunately, had passed during birth. And so her mom had labored with her, but she had passed. It was too much stress on her for that. But I did get to hold her after she was born, and she was just beautiful. But anyway, so that is something that is very close to my heart and very important, and something that I have not had the opportunity to fully realize it, but it's coming. So I'm working on it.
And I kind of want to bring that to light because there, along with being broadsided, that this pregnancy and this baby that you're carrying can die and not, I mean, pregnancy is supposed to be this exciting, encouraging thing. You're bringing life into the world, but some of us have literally given birth to death. And so you're broadsided by that. There is no manual or process or anything for what you experience afterward. But then there are so many other things that no one even thinks about. And even things like funeral homes or nurses or doctors who go through this with other people to an extent, procedurally, that they aren't thinking about or considering as well. And then we're kind of left with, are you kidding me?
Right. Yeah. I know that undertaker, I don't know if they have a different term or what, but the person who came and received Ruby from the hospital, he didn't want to come up to the floor, up to the maternity ward to come and get her. He wanted the nurses to take her down to the morgue and collect her from there. And I didn't know this, but my nurse, Jana, she got on the phone with him and basically ripped him a new one and said, "You will come up here and get this child. You will not be going down to, you will come and get her from here." And he said, "Well, I don't know how it, I don't want to be walking down the hall with a black case with all these mothers and babies around." And she's like, "Excuse me? She deserves to have this respect, and you will do it." And I didn't know about this until much later when Jana told me about it. She's like, "I wasn't going to tell you because I didn't need you to know. I didn't think you needed to know this." And I said, "Well, I'm glad you did tell me, because that just shows me how fiercely you fought for me." And not everybody gets that experience with their nurses and with their doctors. And my heart aches for those people who don't have those earthly angels who are there to help them when they are the most vulnerable and the most broken. Yeah. And that's part of the reason I think that I am so passionate about support and in any way to support people who are going through this, because it is devastating. And people don't like to talk about it. I mean, who does like to talk about it? Well, I do. Because I know that it's necessary. I know that people need it, and I needed it. And I know that you are one of those people who kept me sane as much as you can be sane when you've lost a baby. But I remember so much needing to be able to talk to other people who understood what I was saying and didn't judge me for the crazy crap that I was thinking. And just because when you're going through it, there's nothing logical about loss and grief. And I remember there being time, like my husband and I were in very different places. And fortunately, we were able to work through it and communicate with each other so that we could understand each other. But there were things I would say to my husband. And there's one thing, I don't remember what it was specifically, but I remember telling him, and he looked at me like, "What? That's, I don't know about that." And I'm like, "Okay, noted. Don't talk the crazy talk to Steve." Good. Great. Go to group. And I say the same thing. And everybody else in the room is like, "Oh yeah, every day and twice on Saturdays." And I'm just like, okay, these are my people. They understand. We can express the crazy and it's fine. And I'm not losing my mind. I'm just grieving. And there's no manual for that. Even the manuals aren't really manuals, because they're like, well, it could look like anything for you. And it could look like nothing for you. It's you just have to embrace your journey. And it's like, great. Okay, so I'm just on my own on this. But
yeah,
I could talk with people who knew what I was going through, who could sympathize, who could empathize. And even if it was the craziest thing that no regular person in society would ever say is okay, you could share it with this group and they would say, yes, we hear you, we feel you, we know what you're going through, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And honestly, I remember looking at you and thinking, okay, well, she's on the other side. It's been a few years already. She seems mostly normal, so I'll probably be okay too.
Praise God. That's where you were going with that. I was like, oh no, what is she going to say?
Oh no, we didn't practice this one. What? She's gone rogue, everybody.
But that is so true, and I kind of want
to
I kind of want to park on that a little bit, because one of the things about support group that I just adored was that we could all, it was a safe space to share anything and everything, and it was like the one safe space that we all had, because there was so much taboo in every single one of our stories, things that we could not talk with about other people, things that maybe they weren't taboo to talk about, but no one else would understand if we tried. But in group, it was that one place where we could be like, okay, yes. And even if we hadn't experienced it yet or experienced it already, we were all learning and like, yes, absolutely, that makes sense. Like, there's no reason that should be confusing to you. That absolutely makes sense to every other one of us. And that was one of the things that I loved so much. And even me, I said in the beginning that this podcast is 10 or 11 years in the making, because it was, a year or two after Harlan had died that I started facilitating support group. And then there have been some of those moms on the podcast, and everyone that I met through that, and you coming to group, like we had our regulars, right? And you were one of the regulars.
Yep.
And it just wasn't the same if Sarah wasn't there for whatever reason, because we only met once a month. But it came to a point where, how do I want to say this? It came to a point where like it was getting to be, the needs were really showing themselves to me, but there were more needs than I could address on my own by myself. And there were things that some of us in the group had gone through that we wished we would have had maybe another layer of support for. And one of those things in particular was being pregnant after our loss. And this was something that I had known and felt almost immediately after the regular support group started. Like, there's got to be another support group for pregnancy after loss. But I am one person, and facilitating one support group is a lot. And I don't know if I could do two, because I have a tendency to just like, I just carry all these stories with me. And even now, all these years later, it's been 12 years since Harlan died. I remember babies' names, but if I don't remember the parents' names, you know what I mean? Like I carry these stories with me, and it's, I won't say like a heavy burden, but it's a weight for sure that I carry and remember. And so I was like, if there was one person, since I can't clone myself, who I would trust to nurture these hearts and carry these moms through pregnancy after loss, like who would it be? And there was not even a question that it was you. And I remember going to you and saying, I need to talk to you, and asking you how you would feel about supporting this group. And you took a big sigh and you were like, I need to think about it. Of course I want to do it, but I need to think about it. And I was like, that is exactly what I would have predicted that you would say. And so you did take on that role. And tell me, like, what was that like for you? Because we talk about graduating group, in a different sense. Like when you feel like you've gotten all that you can get out of group, we wouldn't leave group, we graduate, right? But this was a graduation on a different scale, because now you were facilitating another group. So what was that transition like for you personally? having gone through your loss and now you're helping other people in pregnancy after loss?
I guess I would say that having gone through it, I wouldn't, oh man, it was like I tell people that because a lot of people don't think about this, and I've shared this with many people and their eyes have been open, but losing Ruby, if like losing Ruby was this hard, then being pregnant with Zelly was this hard. It was the second hardest thing I've ever had to do because now you're dealing with grief and you have hope. You want to have hope, but then you don't want to have hope because you've seen how this can go. And you are in some strange no man's land where all bets are off and your hormones and your emotions are just, they're rogue. And I leaned heavily on those women who were in group who had been through it before. And I had April to go alongside me. April's son, Ethan, had trisomy 18 as well. And she had him just about a year after me. So I was a year farther in my grief journey, but we connected right away. And we ended up being pregnant together and in the hospital together. And our babies got to meet each other in the hospital because her daughter was born 2 days after mine. And since I had a C-section, I was still there. And their birthdays are coming up this weekend. And so we were there in it together. And so we could talk to each other. But then we also had the women who had experienced it themselves and could say, hey, you're not crazy. This is really, you're fine. It's normal. And I think that was the most important thing in all of the grief journeys and all of the everything that I needed to hear the most was that you're not crazy because it seems crazy. The thoughts that I'm having are crazy. No normal person would think these things, but you're not a normal person when you're going through this. And so having had the support that I needed, and I felt so blessed because I was thinking about all those women who don't have that support, who have experienced a loss and do not have someone to walk them through it and to help them see that this is a different journey than your previous pregnancies have been. And so I was honored and I felt a very strong duty to support others because I got the support that I needed. I tell people it was hell on wheels being pregnant with Zelly.
Yeah.
And my husband, God bless him, he was questioning a lot of things. And especially that last month, he's just like, I need to talk to your doctor about getting you on some meds. I'm like, go for it. I mean, it was really, really hard on all of us. But it was better because I had support. And so the time commitment and just the emotional investment in that, it took me a minute. I had to think about it. I needed to talk to Steve about it. But at the same time, my heart just wanted to say, absolutely, no questions, never turning back. This is happening because it needed to happen. People needed the support. And if I couldn't be a Val, then I wanted to be a Sara doing pregnancy after loss.
Yeah.
And so, and I didn't need to be a Val because I had a Val. So that was great. But yeah, it's very important to me. And I think that, and I did it for several years and we had our regulars and I met some wonderful people and we shared some beautiful stories. And it was really a blessing to be able to experience the joy at the end, right? The rainbow, right? After the storm, and being able to be them through that and be able to simultaneously hold the joy and the sorrow in the same hands and just being able to share that with them and be there with them for that and know that, hey, I survived. I did it. Some may say, not as sane as I once was, but hey, I made it and we'll get through it, right? And no matter what the outcome, we'll get through it.
But do you think, Sara, that it's not so much a question of how sane or how crazy, but it's more a sense of things that people should not have to know. And so it's a different dance because of that. And so, like, along those lines, then you had your three boys, you had loved and buried Ruby, and you had Zelly now. How did your motherhood change? Like, and not just because you had three boys and then a girl, but like for all you experienced and all that you now knew, because that's the other thing about pregnancy loss is Harlan was stillborn. I have my own assumptions as to why, but we will never know. Ruby had trisomy 18. We have had anencephaly. We have had, I mean, all these different kinds of loss across this whole scale, and we know about all of them. And how are any of us alive? It's a stinking miracle that humans exist.
It is.
Because of everything that has to happen just so for us to get here. And I just turned 45. Like, how is that even possible, right? But how did it shape your motherhood? How did you go from being this naive, happy-go-lucky mom of three wild boys to now things you wish you didn't have to know, and you're raising up these four kids in that?
I know that at least in the beginning with Zelly, I mentioned earlier how I wish I could have enjoyed it more. I did try harder to enjoy it more with Zelly, especially those early months where it was all cuddles. And it's funny, I think about it now because I didn't realize it at the time, but a friend of mine came over to visit and to meet Zelly. It was hadn't been home for very long. And apparently I did this with most everybody. I didn't offer for them to hold her. And I realized that later. I'm like, yeah, see, look at her, and I'm still holding her. And I'm not even just like, I'm not letting go of her. So I'm just going to hold on to her forever. And it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just, she's with me. And that's the end. And I embraced that. I really tried to, like, I remember feeling at times, and I do have to say, I did have struggles with postpartum depression with all of the kids. And I think I probably had it managed a little bit better with Zelly. But I remember feeling like stuck, like I have a sleeping baby on me. I can't go and do something. I can't go and do this and that. With Zelly, I was like, nope, this is what I'm doing. I am actively doing this. And so there is nothing else. But it also was hard then too to think, all the things that could possibly go wrong. And she had a milk intolerance. And so I found that out by finding blood in her diaper at one point. And so then my mind goes wild. And, it's so trying to, and I've talked with others about this as well, just having to try to manage being scared of everything and just worrying about all the things and like what could go wrong here, what could go wrong there, what's happening here, and so that part was hard. But I think that having the boys being older, they were into everything, and so they're wild already, and they had been wild, and so I think that helped because then it was, and my husband too, 100%. He was a lot of times the voice of reason and sensibility, and he's like, you need to stop worrying about this. And it's easier said than done, but he helped at least manage some of that. But I really did try to soak it up more. I tried to enjoy more of it, and I tried to find ways to celebrate all of us together, including Ruby, and trying to help Zelly to know her sister, because she doesn't see a sister. She doesn't see that she has a big sister, but we would talk about her all the time. And so by the time she got to the point where she was like understanding things, then it was part of her vocabulary already. And so it's been an interesting switch trying to figure out how to continue to keep her present and just like, we talked a lot about in group about the fact that one of our biggest worries as a lost parent is the world forgetting. Everybody else forgetting, and you're the only one who's still carrying this memory of this child. So I think that would be the biggest mental shift for me, is figuring out how to keep her present with us and still be able to fully live the life that we have and have with our kids, and help them to also be able to keep her present in their lives. I don't know. There's a lot of change, a lot of growth that happens for sure. But yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm falling apart right now. I think part of it is like the body just always knows. And October 1st hit, Sarah, and I've basically been like this all month. Like, and I love October because it's my birthday, right? And I get to celebrate myself in all the ways that I want and that I choose because I'm a grown adult.
Right. Yeah.
But also, like, it's pregnancy and infant loss awareness, and no one is more aware than us. And it's just this like constant pull and struggle. Like, I don't want to spread awareness, but also I don't want anyone to ever walk this path not equipped or prepared as much as possible, you know, and not even walk the path of loss, but walk the path of supporting someone who's been through it. And so basically I'm just a mess, and I'm sitting here like listening to how wise you are, and I just miss you so freaking much. And I'm sitting here crying trying to host this episode.
Oh, I love it.
But that was
I've said before that my tears often get stuck. And so I'm always jealous of yours. So you're crying for both of us, because I've gotten better. I have been able to release them easier, but it's still a challenge. So I am blessed by your tears.
I'm carrying that torch for you, girl, I guess.
Thank you.
What would you say? I mean, it's been 9 years for you, 12 years for me, and it ebbs and flows. I think we can certainly agree on that. What would you say to maybe a mom who's walking through it more recently and is wondering, like, what is this path going to look like for me? I can't even figure out how to get through today, let alone tomorrow, let alone the next year, 5 years, 10 years.
Right. I was there. And as I mentioned before, like, you know, seeing others who were farther out gave me hope that there was a way to find a life after loss. But for me, that life is better because of the support that I received while I was in the thick of it. And so for someone who is going through it fresh, I would say seek out the support that you need. It is so hard, almost impossible for us to reach out when we are so deeply wounded, because we are so vulnerable. And a lot of times, for me especially, the way to survive that deep of a wound is to build a shell to protect me, right? Shut down, cut people off, do not let them get inside, right? Become harder. And so it's hard to ask for help on the off chance that they will say no. And someone will not be there for you when you allow yourself to be that vulnerable, to say, I am going through this and I really need support. The mere chance that they could deny you that support, like for family members, maybe they don't intend to deny you, but they just don't know how to be there for you in the way that you need. It's devastating. And I found myself having a very hard time asking for support. They're like, well, just let me know what you need. Okay. Yeah. I don't even know what I need, much less am I willing to put myself out there to ask for it, because I don't want to take a chance, right? You're already wounded. And so what I would say is if you are going through it now and you don't feel like you can see the end, you don't need to be able to see the end. Just find somebody who can be there with you, who can sit next to you and let you cry your eyes out or scream at the top of your lungs or whatever it is that you need. Because going it alone, I don't wish that on anybody. We're not meant to go through something like this alone.
Mm.
We share our joys. We share our happiness. We must also share our grief. And that grief is not safe with everybody. And that's a hard lesson to learn as well. But please do find the people that you can be honest with, who will support you. Because I know that I needed it. And I'm so grateful that I found it. It would be a different story. I would be a different person if I hadn't had that support.
Mm. So good. I would be a different person if I had never met you. I'm so grateful for you. And I feel like I'm just going to put this out in public on recording. I feel like I should introduce you, Sara Schultz, as the host of the Life After Loss podcast, because you have the voice, you have the presence, you have the practical, logical peace of mind. I totally see it. I'm sitting here like, this is the start of Sarah's podcast career. You can thank me later.
Oh boy.
All of the things. But truthfully, but also I'm just so grateful for you, and thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and just all about your own motherhood experience.
Of course, I'm very honored to be here. So
and
I thank
and
you.
What if someone would like to reach out to you for support or maybe help in just finding that first step? How can they get a hold of you?
Well, you can email me or text me. I don't know if you want to put it in a description or something. I don't care how you do it, but I will tell everybody, reach out. I'm happy to either share resources or support you over the phone, or if you're local, whatever the case is, I will, whenever someone says, are you okay with people contacting you? Absolutely 100% yes. Always yes. I don't care what it is, but yes, please do. I will also put a plug in for Redbird Ministries. It is a Catholic-based support ministry that I am actually going to be trained in on, and I will be like a trained facilitator for our diocese in Fargo. And so I'm really excited about that opportunity. But there's a lot of really good resources on their website for free. And so if you are experiencing a loss, or you know someone who's experiencing a loss, please check it out, because I know that they have resources for burial materials as well. Like you can, if you know in advance, you can get some of these things from their website, and it's just a lot of really good resources. So I am very excited for that to be my next leg of this journey. And so maybe once I'm trained with that, then I'll have to start a podcast. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm basically assigning that to you, so you're welcome.
All right, well, I guess we'll have to work together again. So whatever. This is how it went last time. So Val just gives me a commission and she's like, go forth and do this thing. Yes. And so I shall.
Well, you are such a blessing to me. I know that this episode is going to bless all those who listen. And Sara Schultz, thank you again for being a guest on the Motherhood Experience.
Well, thank you for everything.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. To join our exclusive TME community, head over to themotherhoodexperience.com/learn more. Be sure to follow the Motherhood Experience on Facebook or Instagram, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below, and we'll catch you next time.